Hello there, and thank you very much for joining us. This is the first edition of Business Nigeria in the month of March. Before we give you our package today, here are the highlights of stories making headlines in the world of business. NNPC denies plans to increase ex-depot price of petrol as new WTO Director General Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala assumes office today. Asian shares rise on optimism of global recovery. Well, today, our conversation will start from the oil and gas industry and stay in that industry for some time. The focus is the deregulation of the downstream sector of this money-making industry. We will be analyzing the role of government, organized labor, as well as the impact on the masses. It promises to be very interesting. And on the other side of the show, we'll take a look at the performance of the Nigerian Stock Exchange in the past month and prospects in the new months. Welcome to the show. The Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, NNPC, says it has no plans to increase the ex-depot price of PMS in March, contrary to speculations of imminent increase in price of premium motor spirits in the country. In a statement released by the Group General Manager, Group Public Affairs Division, Dr. Kenny Obateru, the NNPC states this in order to jeopardize ongoing engagements with, not to jeopardize the ongoing engagements with organized labor and other stakeholders on an acceptable framework that will not expose the ordinary Nigerian to hardship. NNPC also cautions petroleum products marketers not to engage in arbitrary price increase or herding of petrol so as to avoid artificial scarcity and unnecessary hardship for Nigerians. The corporation notes that it has enough stock of petrol to keep the nation well supplied for over 40 days and urged motorists to avoid panic buying. It further called on relevant regulatory authorities to step up monitoring of activities of marketers with a view to sanctioning those involved in product hoarding or arbitrary increase in pump price. The newly elected Director General of the World Trade Organization, Nigeria's Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, has arrived at the headquarters of the organization earlier today to resume office. Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala was received by top management team of the organization, and on arrival, she was appointed the first female African Director General of the organization on 15th of February after a special meeting by the General Council of the body. The 66-year-old had served as Nigeria's first female finance and foreign minister and has 25 years career behind her as a development economist at the World Bank. She also serves on Twitter's board of directors as chair of the Gavi Vaccine Alliance and a special envoy for the World Health Organization's COVID fight. Now, the Nigerian petroleum industry at present is generally believed to be the pivot of the Nigerian economy and a hub around which other sectors of the nation's economy revolves, and gives gas accounts for about 90% of the nation's oil and gas, accounting for about 90% of the nation's foreign exchange and more than 70% of revenue. Now, deregulation of the downstream sector of the Nigerian petroleum industry, as conceived in 2003, involved the removal of government control on petroleum product prices and the removal of restrictions on the establishment and operations, including refining, jetties, and depots, while allowing private sector players to engage in importation and exportation of petroleum products and allowing market forces to prevail. In March 2020, the federal government finally took the bull by the horns and deregulated the downstream by taking advantage of the low oil prices induced by the pandemic, assuring Nigerians that the development will spur economic growth and development in the country. However, the deregulation of the downstream and pump price increase have always been a contentious issue between government and organized labor over years, and whichever way the pendulum swings between both parties, the masses end up bearing the brunt one way or the other. What I have joining me live to discuss this and to give experts insight into our topic of conversation for today. First, joining me from Abuja is the former Secretary General of the Ijaw National Council, Mr. Alfred Kemapado. And joining me live in our Lagos studio He's an energy journalist and a media strategist, Mr. Yemi Adeoye. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for your time.
Thank you very much for having me.
Okay, let me start from Abuja. Now, my first question to you, comrade, is what do you think at the moment will be the cost implication for regulating the downstream sector of the nation's oil and gas sector in the face of the current rise in global crude oil outlook?
Basically, the question we are supposed to ask again also is that what is the way forward that is best in the interest of Nigerians? I say this to mean that labor unions are supposed to be promoting what will be in the best interest of the people of Nigeria. And in this circumstance, the questions they are supposed to ask is what had happened before, what is happening today, and what is going to happen in the future, which they refuse to ask in the past, which is why we are where we are today. I take it back. The labor unions, I hear they are threatening to strike because of the increase in petroleum products that may come as a result of the deregulation of this industry. But the quick question anybody would not want to ask is, did we not predict this some 3, 4, 5, 6 years ago when the petroleum product was about 97 naira, that if we don't deregulate this sector and style it after the telecommunication sector that was deregulated, that is making everybody enjoy the telecommunication services at a very reasonable price, that we were going to run into this? Did we not predict this? And bringing it to today, labor is striking for a marginal difference of about maybe 8 or 10 naira, whatever the case may be. The question I will also ask again is, when is it now good enough for Nigerians to buy petroleum products for about 160 something naira as against 97 naira that they demonstrated for years ago? So it just tells you that labor union is in our present agenda is not on the side of Nigerians. And by that I mean this. Labor unions are supposed to have known that until we deregulate this sector, that we cannot reap the full benefits of this sector. By that I mean, don't forget that just in the last 3 years, Nigeria has spent about 10 trillion naira importing petroleum products. That simply means that we had imported poverty worth 10 trillion naira and exported wealth worth about 10 trillion naira, which means that if we had deregulated this sector years ago, that 10 trillion naira income that has been exported in the last 3 years would have been resident in this country, and it will have employed the youths that we describe as unemployed. It also means that if only in the last 3 years the 10 trillion naira had exported, then about the last 6, 7 years, you may not be shocked that over 20 trillion naira has been exported. So the effect is that where labor is advancing the export of jobs and the importation of poverty. By that, I also mean that it's only in this country, and unfortunately so, that people ask for more pay without more work. The labor I expect today is to prime themselves, embrace the realities, and ask for whatever will instigate more work in the Nigerian economic space that will add value to whatever it is earning. There are questions to be asked. Why are the modular refineries, out of the 18 licenses that were given out, not working? Apart from the Dangote refinery and the Walter Smith refinery somewhere in Imo State that is working. What happened to the balance of the 16? What are the expected labor to do is to begin to interrogate government with respect to how these refineries are going to work. Probably I mean alongside government set out refineries. They are supposed to collaborate with the Minister of Petroleum, Chief Timipri Silva, the MD of NNPC, and all the stakeholders to ensure that the country is on the right path, despite the sacrifice that it will pay today, as long as the sacrifice is going to pay off for good tomorrow. So if you ask me again, that what is the implication of the cost, I will tell you, and I will describe the cost, is that as of today, labor is on the wrong side of history. As of today, labor has the opportunity to right ourselves on the better side of history and stop this brigandage that they call protest. You see, asking for excellence in life is also part of protest, and I want you to know that. So Labour is acting locomotive in a jet age. I'm sorry to say, with all of these shenanigans, they may be leaving out their usefulness. I say this to mean that they may do all of these things so that the federal government and all stakeholders, probably they may be doing all of these things to cajole the Minister of Petroleum, Chief Timothy Silva, and the MD of NNPC to call them by the side and give them money in the forms of dollars so that they can enrich their private estates and advance their selfish aggrandizement. But you know one thing? Most of the roads some of us refused to construct when we were in positions in this country are the roads that have eliminated most of us in accidents, including those of us who refuse to do those things. So I want to let them know that if they refuse to go on the right side of history and ensure that Nigeria takes the right path, irrespective of the sacrifice, if they don't reap it today, their children will also leave to reap whatever they are sowing today. So I want to appeal to them. I want to beg them. I want to say, please, this is not the time to play ego. This is not the time to flex muscle. This is not the time to begin to make money that will not advance this country. This is the time to reason with all stakeholders in the Ministry of Petroleum, NNPC, and everything to see how we can deregulate this sector to the extent that there will be abundance of fuel and the sector will begin to create jobs, because we have what it takes to produce to satisfy the consumption, not just in Nigeria, but the consumption that satisfy the whole of West Africa and, if possible, beyond.
All right, Comrade Alfred, noted. Now, let me ask Mr. Deoye the same question. Mr. Deoye, I'm going to ask you on the spot. What is the opportunity cost of deregulating the downstream? Like Comrade Alfred, it took us a little bit back down the memory lane to remember what has happened even before now. And I know, a professional journalist in the energy sector for more than 15 years, I know you also have something to say. What do you make of this? What's this opportunity cost?
Okay, first off, I would say it's quite unfortunate that, we are still discussing this issue in 2021. I recall sometimes in 2011, there was a very robust town hall meeting somewhere in Muson Center. We had everybody that mattered in government, but in public and private lives, all gathered together, to discuss this same issue. And a lot of statistics were reeled out. A lot of issues were put on the table. The hindrances, the advantages, the disadvantages, and everything. And we thought, okay, finally, a town hall meeting of this nature would, nip this, protracted issue finally in the bud. But unfortunately, that is not to be. And in 2012, which was, of course, the following year, there was the Occupy Nigeria strike, which shut down activities in most parts of the country over this same issue. Now, roll forward the tape to 2021. That is 8 to 9 years later. We are still on the same spot, discussing the same issue. The question, like the gentleman in Abuja said, the question I would want to ask would be, what has been the role of labor within that 8-year period to look at these issues, and sit down with government and relevant stakeholders to find a lasting solution to it? Why is it that whenever the issues come to the forefront, like prices are about to go up or come down, and we all know that this is not basically controlled locally, it is controlled internationally. Now, why is it that they always wait for this point before they will try to say they want to engage? That's number one. Number two, the issue we're discussing today is an institutional problem. It goes far beyond the oil and gas industry. We have a very terrible maintenance culture in our system. Now, look at the refineries. They are the way they are because of this same institutional problem I'm talking about. If you go to the electricity industry, the electricity sector is the same thing. The state of our roads, the deplorable condition of our infrastructure, it is simply because all we do is we build and walk away. We don't develop that culture of maintenance, knowing fully well that this infrastructure that has been built, call it a refinery, a power plant, a road, whatever you call it, it has to be maintained so that future generations will meet it. So, like the saying goes, A generation will plant a tree, another generation waters the tree.
Yeah.
Another generation will guide to make it grow, and another generation probably would enjoy the fruits of that tree. We need to start thinking about, institutions, building institutions that will sustain us. This issue of deregulation is like we're kicking the can down the way or postponing the evil day, so to speak. No matter what Labour says, no matter what Labour does, you cannot stop an idea that is right. When the time comes for that idea, you can change it. So I think Labour has its role in a society like ours. I would not dispute that. Labour, in fact, they have a very fantastic role in a society like ours. But we need to also understand that the role of Labour is not just to go on strike whenever there's a government policy that does not tally with their, No. The role of Labour is to look at issues. In fact, you can project that this issue that is coming up, it might end up this way, and this would be the effect on Nigerians. It is on the basis of that you would engage, the government. Deregulation is long overdue. We shouldn't be discussing it. It's like we're still discussing cattle, open grazing as against ranching, which is practiced all over the world. That is the way it is. It's high time we start looking at it from that angle. And if we do, because the PIB, we've been talking about the PIB is supposed to address a lot of all this. Now, when the PIB does come, and NNPC becomes a commercially viable organization as against a government, national oil company and all of that, when that time comes, how do we expect a commercially viable organization with government's minimal interest, so to speak, to now be the one, importing petroleum products or subsidizing, as it were? We're talking about subsidy. The major problem with deregulation in this country is that with regulation rather, is that we've not been able to manage it without subsidizing it. Now, I understand that the issue of petroleum price control in this country is almost like the issue of guns in America. Nigerians don't want to hear that there's a penny climbing on. And even just because of these discussions we're having, there are queues already, across the country.
Yeah, I saw that too.
Good, queues are building up already. And this is NNPC saying we have enough product to wet the country for 40 days, but notwithstanding, the queues have started. That is how sensitive this discussion is. So NNPC has a role to play before the PIB comes and makes it go back to the commercially viable status that we all hope it could get to. But for now, the major essence of NNPC is to play their pivotal role in especially the refinery. The refineries are being refurbished. I gathered the start-off is supposed to be Port Harcourt, go to Warri, come to Kaduna. Now, if that has been done, the moment that is done, the NLNG model, which is the most successful model we can discuss in the oil and gas industry, would be brought to book, because at the end of the day, you do not have to reinvent the wheel. You already have a successful model. Just copy and paste. NLNG is doing very well. Yep. In fact, it was one of the organizations that pulled this country out of the first recession. You understand? So if we have that kind of model, that is what we should be thinking about. The question should be, the refineries, why have they continued to remain moribund in spite of all the turnaround maintenance we've had over the years and all of that? So this NNPC management has come to say, you know what? We don't want to continue doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Past governments have done this same thing. They call it turnaround maintenance. They put in money and all of that. And, nothing has come out of it. So for once, we're seeing a totally different idea, which is a fantastic concept if you ask me. Okay, we'll fix it to the point where investors can find it worthy of their investment, and we'll bring in investors to partner using the NLNG model. So NNPC will take the back roll and the private investors will roll. I'll give you a quick instance. Look at if we use the LMA Petrochemicals, the refinery. If the MD of that organization, for instance, wants to fix a part in the refinery, it doesn't need to write to Abuja. It quickly notifies the market and gets the part transferred to him immediately. But the MD of Kaduna Refinery or Warri Refinery has to clear, has to get clearance from Abuja and all of that. So all these bureaucratic bottlenecks still goes into the current state of our refinery. And when we look at deregulation, conclusively on my part, I think whether we like it or not, we can never overemphasize it. government has no business in business. The business of government is to set a level playing field, put down the policies, let private organizations come and run that particular sector. Now, the government can also afford to play because there's something we call national assets. For that purpose, government can also play, but government will play also as a competitor in a competitive industry, allowing the forces of the market forces to play the pivotal. So that is where the regulation is at the moment. It has come to stay. If we don't do it now, we'll do it in the future. So it is better we engage Nigerians now. Labor should be telling Nigerians the facts of the matter, that this thing is important for us to move forward. It is better we deregulate than we continue queuing for fuel.
Comrade Alfred, I actually had that question for you, but you've touched on it in the your first response. Now, we just exited recession, and of course, clearly there is no budgetary provision for subsidy. Do you think this is also another opportunity for us to cash in, to totally deregulate?
Basically, that is what it is. You see, let me tell you something. In nation building, there comes a time where sacrifice is needed from not just the political class, but from the citizenry. It's just unfortunate that the sacrifice is being driven at a time that things are becoming very difficult. But I can assure you that beyond this point, it will even be more difficult and excruciating, for want of words, okay? So the truth is, we have a problem, and we have to solve it. And the way to solve it is to deregulate. Let me tell you something. Once you deregulate and private investors begin to come into that sector, first it will create employment, okay? And there will be more income for people to spend on these resources. So that's a given. It's a no-brainer. What labor is, you see, let me tell you something. I've been a leader of movements and struggles like this. Please, labor, forgive me. But the truth is, I can tell you on national TV, what labor is doing is unnecessary. What labor is doing is extortionists. They just want to extort the government. I say this because, do we not know, does labor not know that there is no provision for subsidy in the current budget? Yes, they do. Did labor not know that the amount of money that we have spent on subsidy over the years is exporting the funds that are meant to create more jobs in this country? Of course they do. Did labor not know that all the moribund refineries in these countries that have been existing doing nothing, but members of their so-called labor are being promoted and are being given allowances to the ranks of MDs? And did they not know? So all of these things were looking right. It just tells you that as of today, labor is getting locomotive in their thinking. So in this current regime, there is no subsidy. The thing done bad, it done bad. Let us all repair it for the good of all. And you know the good news? The good news is that Nigerians and Nigeria as a whole is a huge market for petroleum products. We have not talked about the West African countries and the other countries surrounding us. It's a huge market. So it's an opportunity for us to deregulate, let the private sector be supported to take advantage of the market. Let refineries begin to spring up in places like Bayelsa, where the Minister of Petroleum, Chief Timothy Silva, comes from. They should support refineries to take advantage. After all, one of the elementary things they are taught us with respect to manufacturing is close to raw materials. They should support the ministry, support the NNPC, support all the stakeholders, so that the private sector can begin to take advantage of this environment to develop refineries that will serve the whole of this country. And people can begin to buy products. And let me also tell you, whether you call deregulate or not deregulate, in places like the Niger Delta, where I come from, maybe today we they buy fuel for about 230 naira, 250 naira in the creeks. I'm not saying that is right, but I'm saying that it be deregulated. Then secondly, we now need to begin to take advantage of whatever we call illegal refinery and begin to transform them and form them into cooperatives, train them, annex them, so that they can turn out their illegality to legal ventures and begin to create more jobs. So it's a win-win for labor if only they can go the right path. But these other paths they are going so that they can take advantage of the situation to extort government, put money in their pocket. Let me tell you, it is even very possible that labor has gone to government now and I told them that, okay, the prices will go up to so amount, we will strike. Then you bring it down to a particular amount, you know, so that it could be like, say, we do something. Then they collect their monies in their pocket and advance their private estates. That is also a possibility. I'm telling you, as somebody who has led union for 6 years consecutively, so these are possibilities. So if you ask labor, what is their argument they are putting on the table? It's baseless, it does not have substance, it's not forward thinking, it's locomotive in a jet age, but you see, they have all it takes. They have all it takes to come to the table, again I say, with all stakeholders, including the Minister of Petroleum, and forge a way forward. Because what they are doing today keeps them on the wrong side of history, which they have been years ago. We would have deregulated this sector. Remember, this country almost went in flames when petroleum products was taken to 97 naira. Today it's 160 something naira, and you are striking for it to come back to 167. You they go front, or you they go back. What are we doing? This is so ridiculous. This is so anti-Nigerian. You understand? It does not take just President Muhammadu Buhari to change this country. Everybody has to contribute to the change of this country from everywhere you occupy, including you, even the journalists. You understand? We need to begin to call names. We need to begin to cause interrogations in a manner that is so blunt and so direct to the point, so that we can all collectively bring the change that we need. But for this one, it is even too elementary to debate. It is too elementary to debate. I repeat, deregulate the sector, support the private sector, take advantage of the market. 200 million people and beyond around, that's a market. That's an opportunity. My brother, it's a no-brainer.
Seeing this really in another way. Hold your thoughts, Comrade Alfred. I'll be back to you. Let me continue with Yemi's in the studio. Yemi Sadeoye. You can hear that passion, and you know, it's just really not what the benefits of deregulation, which many say will promote efficient effectiveness and of course cost efficiency. Now let's look at this liberalization policy. That's also something that do you see this actually playing out well with Nigeria's downstream sector? And it's also talking so very much on the refining capacity of Nigeria.
You know, everything he said is actually, you know, very reasonable, because what we're discussing here today is actually a no-brainer. Like I said, you know, what has happened between 2012 that we attempted to shut down this country over this same topic, and now what have we done? Did we just finish that and every stakeholder went to sleep until now? So that is the issue. Now, looking at the liberalization of the downstream, it's not an issue. It's truly very elementary an issue. But having said that, I think it is not too late for us to try to start doing new things, not because of the fight that labor is putting forward, but also because of what we as a people are trying to leave behind for the generations unborn. We don't talk enough about the children, about the generation. Look, this country is in a terrible place right now, because the children that we refused to train in 1999 are the ones carrying guns today. The children that we have refused to send to school to educate, to train, or to build roads and give a meaningful life 20 years ago, they are the ones threatening our existence today. So if we also have opportunity, if it can start in the oil and gas industry, let it start. Let us start the issue of thinking about the tomorrow. Enough of the today syndrome. You know, oh, let's just get past. Under my government, let it be that when I was in power, there was no fuel queues. It should go beyond that. It should go beyond that. Also, let us start thinking of, if I'm the GM of NNPC, and during my tenure there were no fuel queues, everything was peaceful. Let us start thinking again. When I leave office, what is going to happen? What are the legacies that I must have left behind, that I would also sit back as a retired GMB or whatever, to look and say, yes, we did that in our time.
Yeah.
That is where this discussion should go to. Because after this talk and all this controversy and all this noise, they would arrive at a figure, and either government concedes or whatever, that figure will come and Nigerians will pay and everybody will go back to sleep. Then 3 years later, when there's an issue, maybe there's an issue in Iraq or in Iran or in Saudi Arabia, and the price of crude oil goes up, and it's supposed to affect us locally, people would start agitating once again. And that is where labor should come in. Enlighten the people that it is not within our powers. I understand that when a government, successive government, has failed Nigerians, up until this point, a lot of expectations are not being met across board. That is the problem. Across board. So there's a huge trust deficit. And that is why whenever government says, oh, we're doing this for that purpose, people are always agitated. Oh, okay, what are they saying again? Because we seem to live in a different world, one for the people and one for those in power. So that is where all of this is coming from. But away from that, if we want to bring substance to the discussion and take a deep dive, it will be glaring that it doesn't make sense, okay, for a country like Nigeria, with the enormous resources we have in oil and gas, not to be able to refine its own product. It doesn't also add up that a government like that of Nigeria will be waiting for the Dangote refinery to kick off so that it can easily, I recall the former minister who announced that if by 2019 or thereabout, Nigeria is still importing, it should be fired or he will resign. But this is 2021 and we are still importing. You have crude oil, you're blessed with this product. You take it out, you ship it out to refine, then you bring it in, then you're complaining about naira dollar parity and all of that. It will not work. It doesn't make economic sense. It doesn't even make arithmetic sense. Okay? So where we should be, where I expect labor to engage, the government, is to either be a part of the process to ensure that these refineries are finally, capable of being either privatized fully or like the NLNG model is able to come in. Labor should sit down with them. Then when the understanding is reached, when they come to sort of a congruency, labor should be able to advise or to enlighten Nigerians. Now look, at the end, at least labor should be a voice Nigerians can trust. If at all they say, okay, government has not met all our hopes. So talking about it, the refineries are institutions. The health sector is in shambles. The electricity sector is in shambles. So it cuts across every facet of our lives. Engage the people on that note. The federal government needs to start thinking on how to, and when I say federal government, I'm talking about NNPC now, of course, on how to disengage from these activities, because if what we're hearing from the National Assembly is anything to go by, the PIB is going to be passed.
Yeah, by April.
If it's passed by April, we hope and pray that the president would ascend it immediately. And if that happens, NNPC has to start, reprogramming itself. They have to hit the reset button, because that organization is not going to be the way it is today. It's going to become, a competitive organization, like we have, other NOCs like the Saudi Aramco, we have the Petronas, the Petrobras, And if you look at all these organizations, a lot of them are even operating in Nigeria. These are national oil companies like NNPC. We have the China National Oil Company operating here. We have Petrobras here. We have the former Statoil that is also here, Equinor. They are all operating in Nigeria and elsewhere. Ask yourself, where else is NNPC operating apart from the four walls of Nigeria? Or we think the business of a national oil company is importing refined product and exporting crude. That is not the business. They should go further ashore and look for business to boost the economy of Nigeria. That is part of what the national oil company, national oil companies do. You check out Sonangol, they have operations across. You check out Petrobras from Saudi Aramco, all of them. That is what they do. And talking about the prices, labor should be able to engage the people. Even in the United States is the world's largest producer of oil as we speak, doing almost 19 million barrels a day. They fast surpassed Saudi Arabia, which is about 12-point-something million barrels a day. In the United States itself, as we speak, as at this afternoon, a gallon of petrol is over $2. Even in cities like Houston, Texas, where we say is the energy capital of the world, and Houston has comparatively low prices when you compare to other states across the United States, like Florida, like Nevada and the rest of them, you know. But today they are paying over $2 a gallon. That is about 50 cents a liter. And 50 cents is about 230 or 235 naira a liter. So what does that tell us? These are organizations or countries that refine their crude oil. So we also need to understand that what is happening now is only possible because somebody has been subsidizing one way or another. And for that thing to stop so that NNPC can probably function like it should and the refineries can also function, we need to start discussing the real issues. The real issues goes far beyond that 10 naira, 15 naira increase. It goes far beyond that. We're talking about generational issues here. Institutions that our generations yet unborn would meet. That is what we should be discussing now.
Let me talk to Comrade Alfred and wrap up with him. But now, Comrade, back to you. You identified more than 10 trillion naira has been spent, and we exported that amount of jobs too, because in reality, that's what it means. Now, what do you also think should be done to also cushion the effect if at the end of the day we totally deregulate? What more do you think? Many talking about mass transit and all of this, that I think labor also has a role to play in all of this.
Basically, let me tell you something. Yes, we can come on national TV, roll out our policies, get a mass transit system, and see how you can carry people from point A to B, this cushion. My brother, all of that is grammar. How many can you carry? In this era where we have institutions that cannot really drive our policies, okay? All of that is grammar and a bit of pretense. The truth is, let us take one thing at a time. Like, I enjoyed my brother when he talked about how companies like the Chinese national companies, the Saudi Ds, are even branching off the shores of their countries to see how they can even explore oil and make profit in other countries. That's perfect. But you see, it is when you count one that you count two. At this particular point in time, what we need to do is to develop local capacity to see how we can first feed ourselves. When we arrive there, we can now discuss the other ones. Let me give you an example. When you talk about the presidential amnesty program, they say we have about 30,000 ex-agitators in the Niger Delta under the presidential amnesty program. Now, these are ex-agitators, Abi, because they have been able to probably alter the production of oil facilities and cause one or two things or the other. Okay, now, if we begin to develop local refining capacities in that area that begins to take some of these ex-agitators, train them in one way or the other to take advantage of that place and take them off the street, you think any of them will be looking for a means of transportation? I am saying this to say that all of this mass transit, all of this cushion, this, forget those things, all those things are grammar. As long as we can begin to look inwards, increase our capacity to provide more jobs and income in the hands of people, most of these effects will take care. But if you just say, because of this, let us bring out some mass transit buses and everything, I dare you, it will be another line of fraud that will result to some rickety buses that will drop by. The ones that they brought out before, where are they? Even the commercially viable buses that are running mass transit in some other productive parts in this country, where are they? Let us see how we can solve the problem from its root in Nigeria. And that is that this is a problem, but every problem also provides a window, an opportunity, okay, for us to take advantage of and see how we can create jobs. The good thing is that we have the raw materials. We can develop the skills. We have the markets. And we also have the market around us. And labor needs to begin to think how we can develop, we can take advantage of this oil that has been predicted that it will dry someday, to see how we can build the economy, clean an environment, and position ourselves for an economy beyond oil. That is what is going to happen. Labor is supposed to begin to ask ourselves questions. How can we as a country, continue to live with an economy that if oil price in the international community goes down, everything about us has gone down. So, you see, protests is not only by blocking roads. Protests is not only by shutting down offices and making life more difficult for people. Protests also involve the demand for excellence. Labor should equip itself with the capacity to go on the table and profile a way forward for the Nigerian economy from the point of where we have found ourselves today with respect to the petroleum products. And let Nigerians understand our blueprint and get Nigerians on board. And I can assure you that if Nigerians see the sincerity of labor, itemizing and stating expressly and clearly the roadmap towards success as it concerns this petroleum industry, Nigerians will follow suit. So when you come back to that your question, what do you do to cushion? The only thing you do to cushion is for labor to get down with the Minister of Petroleum, the MD of NNPC, all other stakeholders to say, one, we have the resources called petroleum products. How do we transform this to an economy for us that employs everybody and places job and food on the table of people? No shortcut. Shortcut is what has brought us here in life today. We will suffer for a while as Nigerians, but don't worry. In a very short future, with a well-articulated position that we expect them to deploy sincerity and dedication to, we will see the light of the day. And this is going to affect all other sectors. Labor is coming to strike. What is Labor's input on the petroleum industry bill? Until now that the petroleum industry bill has been watered down. I hope you know that the petroleum industry bill that is debated today in the National Assembly is not the solid petroleum industry bill that was proposed years ago.
Well, there'll be a lot of issues.
What was the take of Labour in this issue? Labour should transform ourselves. Even in football, let me tell you, my brother, we have had people, you know, back in the days in football, you have defenders that it's only defense that you play. You don't go beyond the middle. Football has transformed from where defenders sometimes go up from score goals and midfielders come to hold back. That is a transformation that we have experienced in life. You know, people are doing it. Labour should understand that those labor of antiquity, that 1979 labor that carries just placard to block road, should not be the labor of today. Today's labor should be a labor that constructively will engage the government, society, put solution on the table, broker partnership, and force the government. If you have to strike, you strike on those constructive engagements and not this strike to extort government. I dare you, this is an extortionist strike just to expand their frontiers of personal aggrandizement, period. So my brother, all those cushy or no cushy, forget it. The only way to cushion this effect is go straight to see how we can develop local capacity that will refine these products, create jobs that will serve the whole of sub-Saharan Africa and Nigeria. Thank you.
All right there. I have to let you go now, Comrade Alfred Kemepado. I thank you very much for your time, former Secretary General of Ijaw National Council, and your views on this very important topic of discourse. All right, I still have Mr. Adeoye in the studio. Mr. Adeoye, constructive engagement from Labour is key. And that is what I also think, as a person and many Nigerians who want. What kind of engagement do you see moving forward?
You see, the thing about engagement is, first of all, what is the essence and the purpose of the engagement? Labour wants to engage government. We need to start checking and start, because like I said earlier, there's trust deficit across board. Now, the other gentleman in Abuja, just the comrade, he also just mentioned something about labor. Even if I do not subscribe to that thought, that,
of course.
but this is a country where possibilities abound.
Yeah.
So that is what goes into the level of trust deficit we see today. So Nigerians, because the Nigerians are always at the receiving end, so we do not know who to trust. But the point is, if labor can engage government from a constructive point of view, what we should be saying today would be a case of this deregulation. What are the ones and twos? What are the ABCs? How does this deregulate? How does it transform the life of the organizer on the road, the tailor, the mechanic, the masses of Nigeria? How does it transform? Let's break it down. Let it come to the ABCs, so that when you can speak it to Nigerians in the language they understand, they will start saying that, okay, for once, we have a system that is trying to get it right. It is no longer discussable that the issues are bound, that there are issues. It is not discussable. There are issues. Now we are talking solutions. Labor should be part of the solution. There's nothing scary about deregulation. For the love of Mike, there's none. There's none. Don't let us build it into this monster that are trying to, deregulation, you must not, is unheard of. No. In every successful economy, the private sector always drives the economy. Even if government at any time is the largest spender, but we've always seen that the private sector drives the economy at every time. So if we can allow private sector investments into this refining issue, at least we can be sure of one thing.
Yep.
The cost of freighting will be taken out. Because we produce crude here, this crude is bought in dollars, shipped abroad in dollars, refined in dollars, brought back in dollars, and sold in naira. And what is can you compare naira dollar? It's about, officially it's about almost 400. And on the street, it can be less than 470, 480. So if you're doing that kind of business, how do you hope, what century would you post profit? You can't talk of profit. And if you don't post profit, you cannot expand. We expected the government to also, while government is doing what it plans to do with the refineries, there's nothing bad. There's no problem in still building the capacity, building more refineries. It's not a bad idea. There are things we call national asset. It is always for strategic purposes that we have national assets. Yes. Those ones will be there, but you would make sure that you have a system. The last time I checked, I think Nigeria does anything between 32 to 35 million liters of petrol a day. It is not so much that we cannot manage, that we cannot refine. With the reserve of 450,000 barrels that the refineries are doing a day, it's not so much. So I think labor should, if possible, engage consultants. Bring in consultants such that when you are engaging government, you will be engaging government from a position of strength and knowledge. At the end of the day, the final verdict should be that this policy should be clear and the ways it's going to benefit Nigerians. That is the whole essence. It has to benefit Nigerians, and we have to see it on black and white that it will benefit Nigerians. But conclusively, NNPC has to get out of this import-export business. The private sector, the independent marketers, the major marketers need to come in so that we can forget about this discussion. Like I said earlier, it's like us still discussing cow. In 2021, while people are developing the technology to go to America is in mass as we speak. Already Elon Musk is building the technology to take us to London in 20 minutes. And we are talking about cow, and we're talking about refining. So it is so archaic a discussion. That is why he said it is a no-brainer, and I agree it's a no-brainer. It's actually shameful that we're still having this discussion. The regulation is not monstrous. It's going to pay off in the long run, because as the price goes up and comes down, we benefit. There are times it will drop below normal. It will drop because international forces control the price, and we should leave it be like that. It's not a monstrous issue at all.
Energy journalist, the media strategist, and a senior colleague, Mr. Yemi Adeoya. Thank you so very much for your time.
Always a pleasure, my brother.
Thank you for joining us on the show.